Whether you're a believer or not, the world is filled with creepy stories passed down throughout the ages. From grisly tales of suffering and death, to cursed tracts of land that locals refuse to enter after dark. On today's episode of Never Stop Learning, we will be checking out 5 locations around the globe that have some of the darkest histories ever recorded and where the dead refuse to rest. Number 5. Tucked into a dark corner of Mexico City is one of the world's most haunted and tragic locations, the Island of the Dolls. Locals swear they see ghosts and hear shadows talking. They believe these lands are cursed. Hundreds of years ago, the locals hid in these forests to escape death from the conquistadors. The Island of the Dolls was for centuries a place to disappear. Back in the 1950s, Julian Santana Barrera found the body of a young girl at the bottom of a waterway just outside his front door. She had been swimming with her friends nearby, but the current got a hold of her and she drowned. Floating nearby, he found a doll and assumed it belonged to the young girl. He decided to hang the doll up on a tree to appease her potentially vengeful spirit and started a habit he wouldn't break for the rest of his life. This was when the trouble on the island began. In the mornings, Julian began seeing ghosts around the island, and one day he woke up to find all of his crops had died. He began hanging up more and more dolls, hoping that the spirits would be appeased and allow his crops to grow once more. Over the next 50 years, he collected more than 1,000 dolls. He received them as gifts from neighbors, as well as collecting discarded dolls from the trash. Everywhere you look, there are dismembered dolls hanging on trees, nailed to buildings, and even doll heads on spikes. It is said that these dolls are also haunted by the ghost of the dead girl. It is said that when the sun goes down, these dolls come alive and whisper to themselves. Visitors to the island have claimed to witness the dolls' eyes following them as they walk and hearing the dolls speak. In 2001, Julian was found dead, drowned in the exact same spot as the little girl 50 years earlier. Today, you can visit the Island of the Dolls by ferry, but make sure you board the last boat off the island before the sun goes down, or you will be spending the night with the dolls. Number 4. The Skirid Mountain Inn rests at the base of Skirid Mountain in the United Kingdom. Reputed to be the oldest pub in Wales, historians aren't quite certain when it was built, but the first record of an inn at this location dates back to 1104. The inn itself has always been a public house because of its remote location. Many times it has doubled as both a courtroom and a gallows for local criminals. The main staircase of the inn has a worn-away notch in one of the massive wooden beams where the hangman's rope has taken countless lives. The first hanging at the inn was over 900 years ago for a man guilty of stealing a sheep. In 1685, the Duke of Monmouth led a rebellion against King James II, but the uprising failed. After the Duke was beheaded, the king sent a man known as Hanging Judge Jeffreys to the inn to deal justice to the rebels in the region. He hung over 200 people, some for simply knowing some of the rebels. The last hanging was in the 17th century, oddly enough, for the same crime as the first, sheep theft. In the late 1800s, Lady Fanny Price lived on the premises, but she died of consumption in the building. It is said her ghost can be found walking the pub late at night, unable to rest. A relative of Fanny, Henry Price, can be heard marching up and down the cobbled streets next to the pub, as well as banging on the chimney in the attic, scaring any of the inn's guests that are in earshot. Glasses at the bar tend to fall victim to the ghosts of the house. Roughly 10 to 15 a week will fly off the shelves. In full view of around 8 to 10 people in the bar, someone's change traveled the full length of the bar and then off the edge, floating about 2 feet before falling to the ground. Guests at the inn have reported some of the ghost activities, with one guest being unable to sleep as someone was spinning the toilet paper roll in his bathroom all night, keeping him awake. Another guest reported that he took out his false teeth to go to bed, only to wake up in the morning to find his teeth on the other side of the room, broken in half. The atmosphere at the inn takes you back to another age, but if you stop in for a drink, keep your eye on your money at the bar. Number 3. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium was once a beacon of hope. The original goal of buildings like this one was to offer fresh air, experimental surgeries, and kindness to those affected by tuberculosis. The first sanatorium was built in 1910, but was quickly considered too small to deal with the influx of patients. So a 5-story structure which could house up to 500 patients at a time was built. By 1926, it was completed, and the hospital began receiving patients. TB is a horrible disease that would eat away a person's lungs and was often a death sentence to anyone who contracted it. When people died here, they did so in great numbers. A special tunnel, nicknamed the body chute, was used so that patients weren't burdened by the grim sight of death every day. With so much pain and death here, it's no surprise that this structure is said to be one of the most haunted locations in the world. People have reported seeing a shadowy figure known as the Creeper crouching in corners. When approached, it will often stand up and begin crawling across the walls and ceiling before disappearing. One of the most popular ghosts at this location is a child named Timmy. According to legend, Timmy was a 6 or 7-year-old boy who died at Waverly, but his spirit was unable to move on. Visitors who go to Waverly often bring with them toy balls to which they attempt to coax Timmy to come play with them. The ball will sometimes move on its own, creeping out anyone in the room. If you've enjoyed this episode so far, make sure to subscribe to see everything else this channel has to offer. Number 2. Resting in the shadow of Mount Fuji, Akikahara, or as it's known in English, the Suicide Forest, is an enchanting and at times very creepy place to visit. Also called the Sea of Trees, this forest rivals only the Golden Gate Bridge as the world's most popular location for people to take their own lives. Each year, approximately 100 people walk into these woods with no intention on leaving. All this sadness creates a darkness that is difficult to deny. The legends of this forest are plentiful. Locals in the area refuse to go anywhere near the forest after dark. It is said that compasses malfunction constantly, causing some visitors to get lost and lose their minds. In the 19th century, this forest was a popular location to commit the act of abasute, which is the practice of abandoning elderly relatives so that they die of starvation or dehydration. Combining those old world practices with thousands of suicides, and you have a land infused with ghosts. Legends here are like living, breathing entities that feed and grow with each new body found. Entering this forest after the sun goes down is not recommended. Visitors speak of hearing voices all around them. Legend states that the Yuri, or ghost of a life taken prematurely, will cry out in the night until their corpse is found. It may even lift its corpse to bring it closer to the living. Walking in this forest is a haunting experience. People say they feel themselves being watched from all directions. There is something about these woods that seduce the suicidal into its grasp. Perhaps it's the collective spirits that now reside here, lurking in the sea of trees, just waiting for their next soul. Number 1. Venice, Italy is a must-travel destination to millions around the world. But off the coast, there is an island where the living are forbidden to tread. Waverly Island, or Plague Island as it was once known, is said to be so evil that you would be hard-pressed to find any local willing to step foot on the island. Fishermen won't even fish in the area surrounding the island, as they fear it is cursed. Back in the 13th century, Waverly Island became a quarantine colony when the bubonic plague swept through the city of Venice. The Black Death cut through Europe, killing 1/3 of the population, so traveling to this island was a death sentence. Corpses on the island piled up, and the sick lacked access to help, so all they could do was wait to die. In the middle of the island, the dead, or those too sick to fight back, were burned in a giant pyre. It is estimated that 160,000 souls met their end here. In the late 18th century, an asylum was built on the island. Isolated from civilization, the mentally disturbed couldn't bother anyone. The patients were mistreated and mostly ignored by the staff. In 1922, a psychiatric hospital was constructed, but from its opening, hospital patients reported seeing grotesque, shadowy figures of plague-era ghosts, as well as hearing screams from people being burned alive, but the staff continued to ignore them. In the 1930s, rumors began that the doctor at the asylum was conducting experiments on the patients in his care. In an attempt to cure insanity, he would butcher his victims, attempting lobotomies using crude instruments like hammers and chisels. Patients unlucky enough to be taken to the bell tower never returned. The tale doesn't end there. The doctor became a victim of his own bad behavior. After years of performing unspeakable acts of human depravity, the doctor too saw the ghosts that his patients had reported. It is also said that those spirits led him to the top of the bell tower, where he jumped or was thrown by supernatural forces to the ground. Yet that fall did not kill him, instead leaving him alive but immobile and in immense pain. That was until a sickly mist crept in, concealing everything. While surrounded by the choking fog, something slowly choked the life out of the good doctor. So that's 5 locations around the world where tragedy echoes even to this day, and the spirits of the dead continue to haunt the living. Thanks for watching this episode of Never Stop Learning. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to give us a like and subscribe. And if you can think of a creepy location that we've missed, please leave it in the comments below. Until next time, sleep tight.